Billy Donnelly here for This Is Infamous. Thanks for checking us out. 2017 marks the 30th Royal Rumble in WWE history, with the event returning to the Alamo Dome in Texas for the first time since 1997. 30 WWE superstars will enter the ring at timed intervals in the hopes of being the last man standing and earning themselves a spot in the main event of WrestleMania. And this year, fans get a wrestling bonus over the weekend, with NXT TakeOver San Antonio accompanying the Rumble just the night before. Well, someone needs to be in on calling all this exciting action, and the one man who will be a part of the broadcast teams for both shows is none other than Corey Graves. I had the chance to talk with Graves about his transition from in-ring competitor to commentator, his thoughts on the growth of NXT as a brand, his dark horse pick for the Royal Rumble, and plenty more. So without further ado, sit back for the next few minutes and enjoy my conversation with the savior of misbehavior, Corey Graves.
Hey, what's going on, Billy? How are you?
I'm doing okay. You have a busy weekend ahead of you, I imagine.
You're absolutely right. I wouldn't want it any other way.
Well, let me start off by asking you sort of about the transition into being a commentator, because you put your heart and soul into being an in-ring competitor, and then to have that sort of be taken away from you due to the concussion history. How long was it before you really started to feel comfortable in this new position as a commentator and ultimately as a full-time announcer?
It took a while for sure. I think the hardest thing was just accepting the new role. In the back of my mind, like you said, I'd worked my entire life to get to a certain point, and I wasn't going to be able to achieve that anymore. But I wasted absolutely no time trying to figure out the next step. I remember the day that they told me I was done, they said, if you want to go home, this was an NXT TV taping. They said, if you want to take the day off or take the weekend and, go ahead and relax and clear your mind. I said, no, absolutely not. What can I do? And I started doing anything and everything I could possibly get my hands on within WWE. Most of it was at NXT, the Performance Center. I was helping with promos, and I was running cables and running audio for NXT live events in Florida. I mean, any aspect of this business that I could get my hands on, I just dove in with both feet, including jumping in the voiceover room at the Performance Center. And I would call matches over and over, sometimes the same matches dozens of times for hours every single day. I was in the voiceover room probably 4 or 5 days a week for 2 or 3 hours at least, just trying to get the hang of it, because there's a lot more of an art form to it than I ever realized. But I just kept myself busy and just tried to improve. And I got lucky enough to work with some really talented guys who helped me along the way. I think I really sort of clicked for the first time when I started working with Tom Phillips. He's brought the best out in me, in my opinion, and I love working with him more than anything. And then, of course, fast forward to Raw. I remember my first night on Raw, I was sitting in the chair thinking to myself, what am I doing? Like, I don't know if I'm ready for this. Even though I'd been doing live takeovers for, a year plus, I sat there at Raw, and for the first segment, I was kind of tentative, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to say anything or what I should say, or am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to sound stupid? And about, 15 minutes into the show, I went, wait a minute. No, this is what I do now. This is what I've been doing for 2 years. Let's go. And I haven't looked back since.
Well, in all that preparation, are you sort of then a student in the game in that respect of sort of going back and listening to old tapes of talents who have come before you to sort of get some tips and tricks along the way? Because when I listen to your commentating, there's two names easily that come to mind. And that's Jesse the Body Ventura and also Bobby the Brain Heenan, and sort of having that heel persona in the booth, which we haven't really had in a long time. So do you go back and sort of listen to what some of those, I guess, groundbreakers before you did in order to sort of get a better feel for what it is that your role is supposed to be?
Yeah, I've definitely gone back and listened to those two. They've always been my favorites. I think more than anything, it's sort of deeply ingrained in my mind. I don't think I watched anything on television other than wrestling from the time I was about 3 till today. So it's just one of those things that those two guys were always my favorite. They always made my dad laugh, and they made me laugh as a result. And so I've gone back from time to time. I religiously sit on WWE Network and just watch old pay-per-views, and not necessarily for research purposes, just because I'm a fan, but I think you can't help but absorb a lot of that. And that's the most flattering compliment I've been given, is when anybody tells me I remind them of those two guys. I'll never be Bobby Heenan and I'll never be Jesse Ventura, but those two guys are my favorite, hands down. So to be, reminding fans of those two greats is it's a lot of fun for me.
Chemistry plays a really big part in sort of how a heel commentator, I guess, works. And you worked with Rich Brennan and Tom Phillips, and now you're with Michael Cole and Byron Saxton. How does that come together? Because it seems to have been rather seamless with each sort of variation that you've been put into, where you just seem to just flow right into it. So, I mean, is it hanging out, behind the scenes and talking? Is it just something that you've been naturally blessed with in these situations?
I'm a total jerk in real life. No, a lot of it does come with behind the scenes, and I'm a big believer in that. Michael Cole taught me that very early on. That chemistry is incredibly important, and I got to spend a lot of time in WWE TV studios, actually where I'm at right now. Working on like the Raw pre-show and various things, and repetition helps, but to get to know people and what makes them tick. And I remember when Tom Phillips and I first got put together, our first night, we went and did a show, and it wasn't fantastic, and we knew we needed to work, and we went to a bar and sat down and got some beers and just talked. And I got to know him and what he's into and vice versa. And now, we ride from city to city together. And I've known Byron since I joined WWE. He was in FCW at the time, and Cole has been instrumental in my success from day one. He's actually the one that suggested the idea of commentary a shot. So he's been with me, behind the scenes more than anything, but helping me learn things and telling me what to study up on and what to work on. So when I joined Raw, Byron obviously I'd worked with before, but Cole makes it so easy. He doesn't get nearly enough credit for how talented he is to be able to direct traffic, and he sets me up. And Byron does as well. Byron, as much crap as I give him on the air, he's so good at what he does as far as putting me in a position to be me. Which they're the unsung heroes of things. I get to say all the funny things, and they just are, they're busy setting me up the whole time. Which I'm indebted to them forever for that.
Well, do you prefer a 2 or a 3-man booth then? Because they both have their pros and cons, I guess. But which have you felt works best for I guess the product overall, but also for yourself?
Myself personally, I love working with Tom Phillips as the two of us, but that's the only 2-man booth that I've preferred. Mm-hmm. Because he and I have become so close, and we're on the same wavelength most of the time, and he's gotten to a point where he can be a little bit more out of the box. He's not your straight standard play-by-play guy, because he has to keep me in check, because I'll go hard in left field and he needs to make sure that the train doesn't go off the track. So I have a ton of fun. He and I always laugh with each other. But that said, especially when it comes to like a 3-hour Raw, I would be dead if it was just he and I every night, week after week, 3 hours. It can be exhausting just because you just run out of stuff to say sometimes. Yeah. You can tell these stories and try to enhance the product as best you can, but sometimes you just got nothing. And, sometimes these long weeks like we have coming up, by the time Raw goes on the air, I will have called probably 6 hours of WWE in those previous 2 days. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, I can't take my foot off the gas. But that's where it really helps to have Byron or Cole even to step in and balance things. Which, so I think it's more of a situationally relevant question.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about the sort of the feeder system of NXT, because NXT has been this thing that's just organically grown over time, but it's a real interesting setup to watch, because we watch talent develop, they hit their stride, they grow, they get called up, and then other talent steps in, and the brand never really seems to miss a beat. So you have from Bo Dallas to Neville to Sami Zayn to Kevin Owens to Finn Balor, and the list goes on, and the same could be said for the women's division, the tag division. Being on and diving into it both behind the scenes as well as being an in-ring talent during that time, what can I guess you say about the preparedness to keep the train rolling and have NXT never miss a beat?
I think it just speaks to the way that the system is finally set up, and it took time. When FCW became NXT, we had never in a million years thought it was going to be this big, its own brand. You know, we were still in our minds it was developmental, and hopefully someday we could go to Raw or SmackDown. And nobody ever imagined it was going to be this. And I don't even think Triple H imagined this, even though this has been his brainchild. I don't think he ever realized it was going to be this massive. But as the brand grows, then of course there's more eyes on the product, and you have some guys from around the globe who maybe wouldn't have come to developmental, as it were, in FCW. They didn't want to work in a warehouse and wrestle in front of 50 people like we were doing. So you get a little more higher profile free agents, and guys want to be part of NXT, and it's got that buzz about it. So now it's to the point where you're trying to create space for these guys. There are probably, 5-10 guys off the top of my head that I go, man, I'd love to have him in NXT. And they may want to be there, but is there room? Is there time? And then you also have to consider that all the while that these new free agents are coming in, there's guys training in the Performance Center that you probably never heard of, and they're all waiting for their chance. So every time someone, a Kevin Owens comes in, you've got someone like a Baron Corbin who came from a whole different world, but he worked just as hard and he cut his teeth in NXT. So, you know what I'm saying? There's a wealth of talent, and I think it just speaks to the system and the trainers at the Performance Center and the hype of the brand itself that keeps it to be somewhere that talent from around the globe wants to be.
Not all the talent has transitioned well from NXT up to WWE. Some have done better than others, but having sort of seen the growth of NXT and a lot of the talent that's come up, who do you think is sort of the most underutilized talent in the WWE who has come from NXT and made the call up?
If you would have asked me this question a month ago, I would have told you hands down Neville. But I think if you paid attention to what Neville's been doing in the Cruiserweight division in the last month, he might be my favorite superstar to watch right now. He's a guy that I've known back from the independents in England I've probably known Neville 10 years now. And incredibly talented guy, hardworking guy. He just didn't have the right opportunity. And it wasn't necessarily that, people like to blame the system and say, oh, well, they're not doing anything with him. Well, it's time. I mean, we've got all this talent, and sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. There wasn't just the right spot for Neville. And he was patient, and he kept his nose clean and did what he had to do. And now he's in this opportunity where, he's running the Cruiserweight division. So I am so, so proud of Neville and so happy for him for finally getting this opportunity and making the most of it.
Let me give you one more question, because there's a lot of big names in the Rumble this year. And for the first time in a few years, it seems like there's definitely an air of unpredictability about who could walk away victorious and get that shot at WrestleMania. Other than the larger names, though, your Lesnars, your Goldbergs, your Undertakers, who do you see as a dark horse for the Royal Rumble who could really surprise people and sort of have this be a major coming out party for them to be a main event player?
That's actually a really tough question, because all the names you named, I'm like so enamored with the fact that they're future Hall of Famers and monsters all through the Rumble. Oh man. On a personal note, I'd love to see Sami Zayn. I know how hard Sami's worked, and he's been dealing with some issues lately, with Braun Strowman and just getting beat down, but the people love him. They have this connection with Sami Zayn, and I hate to draw the comparison to what Daniel Bryan was a few years ago, but in a very similar way, Sami's that ultimate underdog, and I really think that he could do something big in the Royal Rumble match to really propel him to the next level, for years to come.
Corey, you're doing a hell of a job. Keep up the good work. I enjoy listening to you. Keep working hard at it.
Oh, man, much appreciated. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time.
And there you have it. Thanks for listening. And be sure to like this video down below. Feel free to join in the discussion by leaving your own comments. And subscribe to the This Is Infamous YouTube channel as a whole, so you can be notified of all new video reviews, interviews, and podcasts that may come your way. That way, you never miss a bit of content from us. Oh yeah, and enjoy your Royal Rumble weekend. Until next time, I'm Billy Donnelly.